good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Culture and Academic Medicine kickoff session for a 25-26 fiscal year. Tonight's workshop is brought to you in collaboration with the Office of Academic Affairs and the Office of Faculty Development. We're pleased to have Dr. Maitri Vaidya leading this session. Dr. Vaidya is a healthcare executive and chief wellness officer who blends expertise in healthcare quality, population health, and mindfulness to advance evidence-based whole person care. She is the co-founder of ZESA Wellness and serves as the director of clinical practice as the infectious disease at the Infectious Disease Society of America. A longtime yogi and meditation instructor, Dr. Vaidya brings a deep commitment to mind-body balance to her work. She holds a doctorate in health leadership and policy, a master's in healthcare administration, and multiple professional certifications. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Vaidya.
Thank you, Margie. I'm so excited to be here. I have to tell you, I did my undergrad at UC Riverside before the med school was there and the health system was there. So I'm excited to be back after many, many years and at least giving back in whatever way I can. As Margie mentioned, my name's Maitri Vaidya. I am a healthcare executive as well as a mindfulness leader in the community. Today we're going to be talking about emotional well-being and integrate it into what it looks like within the health setting. We'll be doing some micro practices so that you guys can do breathing exercises, maybe between patients or, in the small amount of time that you get. So we're just going to start off here with a settling in exercise. And so this is to kind of get us all on the same frequency level. I welcome you to get into a comfortable spot, whether you're sitting in your chair or laying down, just with your back straight. And go ahead and take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Let's do that one more time. In breath through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. I want to have you lift your shoulders up towards your eyes and your head and then roll them back, letting that tension go. And you can move your head to the right and the left, forward and backwards, whatever feels good here. Okay, thank you. How's that feel? It's a good way to get started, right? So today we are going to talk about a couple things. One is we'll go over the workshop guidelines together and then talk through some of the learning objectives for today. We'll go into the components of emotional intelligence and finish off with some activities, discussion, a guided meditation, and some documents you guys can take home with you to practice if you want to integrate this into your day-to-day life. Now, starting with the guidelines, I want you, today there may be some potentially uncomfortable topics that come up. Emotional intelligence is a hot topic with lots of new research. So I invite you to be as open and honest with yourselves as possible, remembering these guidelines throughout the webinar today. The first is to stay curious, allowing ourselves to constantly learn and be open. The second is to remember that you are the experimenter, and you're the data. So you're doing the work and you're going to see the dominoes effect. Mindfulness meditation is something that takes time. It is a practice. So please be patient with yourselves. It is kind of like an instrument or a sport where, the more you practice, the better you get. And then finally, being comfortable in that stillness and the silence. And I think that can be some of the, the hardest part, especially with our fast moving lives and how quickly things go day to day, but being comfortable in that quiet spot. And we're going to give you moments of that silence today. It's going into learning objectives, and this is a completely interactive, um, you know, session. So feel free to kind of throw things in the chat if you feel the need to. If you have any thoughts around stuff, I'm going to ask questions, so we can just chit chat together, hang out for the next hour. So when it comes to learning objectives, emotional intelligence, it's a growing field, like I mentioned, and there's continuous research being developed daily around our emotions and how they affect us. The connection to mindfulness is an important factor in understanding our emotions and the actions that come from them. Now, you may know providers that either do research or practice mindfulness. It's becoming more and more common. The science is definitely catching up, and we now have a better understanding of the important connection between mindfulness and emotional intelligence. So today we're hoping to provide you some skills and techniques around some of these topics. The first is explaining the dimensions of well-being. We'll go through all 8 dimensions. We'll describe the differences between EQ, IQ, and EIQ. So it's emotional, intelligence. We'll dive into each one of those definitions. We'll talk about Goldman's model of EI, and then develop a strategy where you can increase your own emotional intelligence. So let me actually, before we go into that, start with the story. I had the privilege of having an aunt that was a gastrointestinal surgeon. And before HIPAA, many years ago, she occasionally, took me around to her office. And then I kind of was one of the reasons that I moved into healthcare. But I was able to go into the office, and she was so motivated. She had this desire to help people, and she found her gift to share with the world. She was vibrant, beautiful, graceful, brilliant, and quite frank, heroic. At a young age, she did some amazing things and accomplished so much professionally. She traveled the US to share her research and her technology with colleagues, but she had an inability to properly care for herself. She was extremely intelligent in the traditional sense. However, her emotional intelligence suffered. And with that, her inability to regulate her own emotions was a huge factor in the poor decisions that she made. So in her late 30s, she turned to wine as a coping mechanism to cope with the stresses of life. Now, 10 years later, unfortunately, her esophagus was damaged, and a regular seasonal flu actually, unfortunately, made her kind of lose her life at a very young age because of her immune system. But emotional intelligence is directly related, and it affects our emotional well-being. And our emotional well-being, in turn, affects our overall well-being. So when talking about our emotional well-being, it's important to touch on all dimensions of wellness. And so that's what we're going to start off with here. These dimensions are interconnected, and many times when one area suffers, other areas tend to suffer as well. And you may have experienced some of this. You're welcome to put your experiences in the chat if you're comfortable with that, or come off mute. But we're going to start with well-being. And what is well-being? Well-being is the overall positive state of one's emotions, that life satisfaction, that sense of meaning and purpose, and the ability to pursue those self-defined goals. A lot of successful people are, they have this strong well-being around them. It includes this sense of balance. So a balance in our emotions, our thoughts, our social relationships, and just our pursuits in life and what we want to do. Now, if we start with these 8 dimensions of wellness, let's start with intellectual wellness. Intellectual wellness is the ability to open our minds. This is where we use our mental power. It's how we apply knowledge and draw on our experiences. Whereas our physical wellness refers to the health of our physical body, right? Listening to and caring for our physical body. Um, Jumping to spiritual wellness, it's our connectedness to the universe, through our perception of that purpose and what behaviors may harmonize our beliefs. And depending on what your background is, there could be a religious component to it. There's our social wellness. I think some of the, those connections that we make with people and the sense of belonging and support. A strong social network is shown to increase happiness dramatically. We know that now. So I'm trying to increase my social network just to live a longer life. And then we have occupational wellness. And this refers to the sense of fulfillment we get from our jobs and from our career. Even when we're burnt out, like we know we have a purpose, right? And that's why we're doing what we're doing. Especially in healthcare, I think certain people tend to lean towards healthcare. I really want to help others. There's financial wellness with our relationship with money. We all have a different relationship. And then environmental wellness, referring to what we do impacting the quality of our environment or our homes or our communities. And finally, that emotional wellness component. It's the emotional quality of an individual experience. And it's a foundational dimension in our overall well-being and all the components we just discussed. Now, a decline in our emotional well-being ultimately affects our overall well-being. That includes any one of these components. A decline in any one of these components would affect, our emotional well-being, or it would keep us out of balance, right? So, unfortunately, my aunt suffered tremendously, and it affected her social, occupational, spiritual, environmental, physical aspects of life. I mean, it really affected every aspect of her life. But in a nutshell, the ability to practice stress management techniques and be resilient, generate emotions that lead to good feelings, these all contribute to that emotional quality of our experience. So I want to jump into a poll right now just to get a feel for who's in the audience. Overall, are you satisfied with your ability to generate emotions that lead to good feelings? Are you satisfied with your ability to generate emotions that lead to good feelings? Generating emotions that feel good can be difficult and perhaps impossible at times. There are times when it's necessary and appropriate not to feel good emotions. However, as we increase our emotional intelligence, we can in turn increase our ability to generate those emotions, even when the pressure is on. There's practices that we can integrate into our day-to-day life. Okay, well, I will move on. Emotional intelligence is ranked as one of the top 10 most important workplace skills. It's known to be tied pretty closely to mindfulness and great leadership skills as well. Now, from a historical perspective, in 1985, the word was first used by a graduate student who wrote a doctoral dissertation and coined the term emotional intelligence. And then it wasn't in academic research for the next 5 years, when in 1990, two American professors, they researched and they were trying to scientifically measure the difference between a person's ability in and around their emotions. And so they defined emotional intelligence, and they defined it as this. Emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's own and other people's emotions, to discriminate between different emotions and label them appropriately, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. They discovered that some people seemed to be better than others when it came to identifying their own and others' feelings and then solving problems involving those emotional issues. Now, I know you guys know people. When I say this, I know you know some folks that you could point out. These researchers developed two tests for measuring what they deemed emotional intelligence. Now, most of the work was done academically, so these professors were not well known, but there was the trait model that came out in 2001 and the ability model in 2004. Now, the trait model focuses on self-reporting of behavioral dispositions and perceived abilities. That's a self-reporting model. The ability model, on the other hand, focuses on individuals' ability to process emotional information and use it to navigate social environments. I mean, that is such a key part of life if you really think about it. And that's how we interact with each other, right? So they said, okay, this is how we're going to define emotional intelligence. And then in 1990, Daniel Goleman, you may know the name, he's a psychologist out of New York and a writer. He asked these professors if he could use their term emotional intelligence, and they said sure. So he wrote a book, and he became very popular, and it became this buzzword, across the country. So Goldman created what we know today as the Common Emotional Intelligence Framework, which we're about to review. And that is a mixed model between that trait and ability model. So not only being able to monitor your own emotions, but also your surroundings and what's going on in your surroundings. Now, I do want to say emotional intelligence is new in the research world. It is constantly evolving. And the newest era of emotional regulation, it's the process of identifying human emotion. So people vary in accuracy, right, when they recognize emotion. Some people know what's going on or can read someone else. Some people can't. Technology, surprisingly, right? Surprise, technology is being used to recognize emotions as well. And there's a lot of video automations that help with facial expressions, audio assists with spoken expressions. There's also written expressions from textbooks and wearables for psychology. So as we understand this, it's constantly moving as well. And as we understand it more, we're starting to find more connections to mindfulness. I'm going to pause for a moment. Everyone's still there? Okay.
Yes.
So what's the difference? Okay, so what's the difference? Scientists believe that, well, let's talk about. So we're going to talk about the intelligent quotient. With that, when we were reviewing the agenda, there was IQ and EQ, and we're going to talk a little bit about the difference. So emotional, let me start with what scientists are saying first. So scientists believe that IQ, that intelligent quotient, measures, intelligence in a narrow way, and it doesn't include the full range of emotional intelligence and cultural sensitivity. It actually is a value that indicates the person's ability to learn, understand, and apply information and skills in a meaningful way. Whereas emotional intelligence quotient, that's EIQ. Now, this gets really particular and very specific, but it's important to kind of have the conversation. Emotional quotient is a way to measure how a person recognizes emotions in themselves and others and manages these emotional states to work better as a group. So there's understanding your own emotions and then the external factor. Now, when it comes to IQ, we're understanding information. When it comes to EIQ, we're understanding emotion. Seema?
Camera on and the audio. So this is really interesting. So when you were talking about the emotional intelligence quotient, in people, especially who are, I don't want to label them, it's really wrong to label them, but in the past they used to say who are more autistic, who
Mm.
don't consider emotions as an issue in anything, they might have a different emotional intelligence quotient, or where would you rate them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I don't have an exact answer for that, but it is true that across the spectrum, right? If we're looking at a spectrum of how people relate and can read other people's emotions, then to your point, they would be on one side of the spectrum or another. And we use the word spectrum across many different, I think, healthcare kind of settings, but it is a range. I don't have that exact answer when it comes to autistic patients and autistic people, but that's a really good point. And I bet you if we looked into that research, we could pull some articles that show that exact information. But that's why I say this is still such a new field and we're learning so much constantly. I mean, I can only imagine the research being done. I know NIH has a whole wing that does research on contemplative medicine. So, non-pharmaceutical alternative medicine. And are you familiar with that by any chance? They have quite a bit of research out as well.
Yeah, the reason I said that was because when people and students talk about emotional intelligence, and this generation is very smart, they really do know what emotional intelligence is, and they do complain about the older generation not having that. Because,
Mm,
and I'll give you an example when we say, I'm working too hard, I'm tired, I need time off. And the attitude of the older generation is, oh, we didn't get that. So why do you get that? So go ahead and work hard and stop complaining. So that's
right.
where I'm coming from. And that's being normal. I mean, this is like people who are in a normal situation. So when you put the spectrum, the autistic spectrum people, they are absolutely gone off the range completely. So
Right.
anyhow, thank you
Well,
for
no,
letting us
that's a
know.
good point. So I'll say that Goldman actually, he screened a bunch of candidates and he found that IQ tests for the ability to process information, as opposed to likeliness of success. He found that IQ contributes to 20% of life success, where the other 80% is emotional intelligence. And so you can be the smartest person in the world in traditional sense in your mind, but if you cannot relate to people and interact with society, it becomes a challenge. And you kind of get bucketed, right? Labeled in so many ways. It's really interesting because this is that balance between society and how we view intellect. Very interesting. So as you can imagine, this is constantly evolving. EQ, this emotional quotient, is newly studied. It's pretty new. And with all the nuances that come with emotional intelligence, there are various studies that have shown that there's a strong relationship between superior leaders and emotional competence. You probably know some leaders that people gravitate towards because they have this energy towards them. We need social emotional competence to be great leaders. We really do. And by leaders, we mean a broad definition. Whether you're leading a care team, a family, patients, a community organization, it could be anything, but it's that gravitas, right? Johnson also did a study that showed that emotional intelligence is a distinguishing factor between great leaders and average leaders. They actually found a strong relationship between superior performing leaders and emotional competence. So there is a relationship. And basically, the social, emotional, relational competency is important for leadership. And I think we instinctually know that, but the science is really catching up to it slowly. So let's talk a little bit about Goldman's model of emotional intelligence. So as I mentioned earlier, he came up with this model in the 1990s, and it's a mixed model, which was a mix of the trait model and the ability model. Remember, that's understanding your own emotions and understanding others' emotions. Now, Goldman outlines emotional intelligence in a wide array of competencies and skills that drive leadership performance. The four main components here are in the four columns, with the 12 specific competencies that are all learnable underneath each as appropriate. And we're going to go through each one right now. The first one is self-awareness. Now, this is the ability to know one's emotions, know our strengths, know our weaknesses, our drives, our values and goals, and recognizing that impact on others while using that gut feeling to guide decision making. And I can tell you, this isn't as easy as it sounds. We may think that we follow our gut feeling, but the influence that we have from the outside does affect us. So recognizing, what actually is your feeling and your thoughts versus the external environment, I think takes that self-awareness. And sometimes it takes quiet time, to be honest, to get there, rather than in that robotic setting that we kind of get into when we're, in our day-to-day getting things done. Now, the second one is, well, I want to, okay, yeah. The second column here that we're looking at is self-management. That is the ability to redirect one's disruptive emotions and impulses and adapt to change. So we may have those disruptive emotions and those impulses, but then how are we adapting? And that's where that emotional self-control comes in, the adaptability, how flexible are you, the achievement orientation, and then positive outlook versus negative outlook. That's social management, or sorry, that's self-management. And then social management, like we kind of mentioned, it's the ability to being empathetic or considering other people's feelings when making a decision. It's that organizational awareness, the awareness of the environment versus just what's going on within you. And then relationship management. Like I said, this relationship management and social management kind of put together, there's this piece of real deep satisfaction that the science shows when you have those social components built into your life. But relationship management is being aware of what motivates others and using that to guide various relationships. So you can imagine a good leader would probably have pretty decent relationship management. That's when we have influence, we're either a coach or a mentor, we help with conflict management or teamwork. It's that inspirational leader that we talk about. Now, we know that to even begin to consider these areas, it's important to start with self-awareness. That's our own emotions and how we react to these emotions. And through practice, mindfulness has the ability to highlight one's own feelings in order to develop and work through the reactions and habits from those feelings, right? Sometimes we just react instead of, just taking a deep breath and thinking through it and then determining what to say. And so it's kind of pausing before we react and really thinking about it. Studies show a significant relationship between mindful competence and having better general empathy skills or being better socially adjusted. So take a look at these 12 competencies. Where might you need some development? Just think about it. And you can feel free to put it in the chat or, take yourself out off of mute at this point, but just think about it. If we were to live the perfect balanced life, what would that look like? And where would you need a little help? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about Dr. Doe. Obviously, I don't know Dr. Doe, but Dr. Doe has a tendency to get frustrated when in the operating room, and especially when the room is behind schedule. I spent 25 years in the hospital, y'all. I've met many Dr. Does. And in his defense, if a surgery starts on time, then only can, he get to his next surgery on time. So there's a reason maybe that he's, frustrated when things are behind schedule. But Dr. Doe's frustrations are demonstrated through verbally targeting those in the environment. He even, threw things once in a while. Now, as part of his quality control peer review process, Dr. Doe was required to participate in mindfulness courses. I don't know if y'all do that, but that is an idea. And through these mindfulness courses, the doctor was better able to understand his own emotions and how they were projected onto the world. And through time and practice, the doctor was able to stop himself when his impulse was to get angry. So, this is an example, but Dr. Joe did improve his self-awareness. Now, that led him to realize his own levels of anxiety and how they play out in the OR. Now, he moved forward to build trusting, relationships and speaking openly about his fears and vulnerabilities. Now, I know this is a story, so it may not be realistic, but the point is that this stuff does happen, and mindfulness has the ability over time and practice to kind of make you stop and translate your impulses into something that may be a little bit more self-aware and then also socially aware. So studies have shown evidence that practicing mindfulness results in that increased empathy, just like the example I gave, and it improves conflict management and other components that are also on this graph here. So I'm going to dive into another poll if y'all want to think about it. On a daily basis, how aware are you of your emotions? How aware are you of your emotions on a daily basis? I would say sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I snap before even knowing why I'm doing it. But other times, I can be calm and cool. Let's see. I thought I saw the chat. There we go. Empathy, very often. 3, 2, 3. Okay, that's good. If you're aware of your emotions, that's great. I think that's the first step to just, building everything else as you move forward. So enhancing EI with mindfulness. Mindfulness practice or meditation generally are essentially practices of self-awareness. That's the first part of emotional intelligence. So for those of you that, feel as though you are aware of your own emotions on a day-to-day basis, you're ahead of the curve because there's quite a few people out there that really are not. Mindfulness is a key tool in understanding ourselves, our own thoughts, feelings, and what is important to us. It can really help us to develop that self-awareness, which is the first component to basing and developing other emotional intelligence skills. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness, meditation, and mindful meditation. I'm curious. We talked a little. Does anyone practice here? Anyone practice meditation or mindfulness? Okay. Well, let's start, a little, right? Thanks, Margie. So medicine and meditation, this comes from the same root, and it means to consider or advise or reflect, to take appropriate measure. Now, suggesting that the two are closely related. There is a connection. The guru of Western mindfulness and medicine, Dr. Ronald Epstein, if y'all know his name, shows why doctors could consider using mindfulness in their medical practice. Now, when it comes to meditation, meditation is when we focus the mind for a period of time. It's a formal practice or technique, and the focus is meditation focuses the mind on a particular object, thought, or activity. There's various types of meditations. You may have heard of some. For example, insight meditation, transcendental, mantra, guided meditations, which we'll do at the end of this. visualization, and mindful meditation, which we'll talk about in a second. And the goal is to alter or enhance one's state of mind to improve concentration, mental clarity, and emotional balance and awareness. So if you know meditators and they say, oh my God, I feel so clear, like I'm clear about what I have to do. Even my to-do list is set, it's clear. What I have to do next to get to a certain project, or, a light bulb moment about a patient. There is that does occur over time when you meditate. Again, this is a practice. It does take time. It's not something that happens overnight, but there is a long-term effect. And we have, we have brain scans that show, the frontal lobe, what is it, frontal cortex, the growth of it, and that's our decision-making portion of the brain, right? So there's tons of science that starts slowly starting to catch up around that. So that is meditation. It's a formal practice. Now, mindfulness is the state of being aware or conscious of ourselves and our surroundings. It's more of an informal process, practice. You're not sitting formally, for 30 minutes or sitting on a mountaintop for days on end. It's quite informal. And it's this present to present awareness where you really are trying to stay in that moment and not think about the past or think about the future. And you can do this anytime or anywhere. It's just really truly being in the moment. Now, it is the act of paying attention and noticing. And it's paying attention and noticing without judgment. So not seeing something and say, well, it could have been this way or it could have been that way. It's just seeing it for what it is and not trying to change it. And this can be developed through practice. It does take practice. Some of us, maybe it comes naturally too, I don't know. But I think in general, it does take some practice. And then finally, mindfulness meditation. Now, this is a formal practice, and it's really focusing on being in the present moment without judgment. So in that way, it's similar to mindfulness. This is where you become the observer of your surroundings and yourself, right? You become an observer of yourself. When you know that you just, you're holiday shopping in the mall and someone bumps into you, and instead of reacting, and you observe yourself. Okay, I'm obviously irritated right now. There's a long line, to get this gift, etc., and being aware of that. And then also the surroundings. But you do become aware over time of your thoughts. What's really going through my head? What's my self-talk? How am I even talking to myself? Is it positive? Is it negative? So it's being aware of our thoughts, our emotions, our surroundings, the environment, and the effects you have on people in the world around you. And it is evidence-based. And I think that's the piece that Dr. Ronald Epstein kind of brought when he brought it from the East and then connected the science to it. It kind of took it, I think, mindfulness and meditation to another level when it spread really across the world. Now, mindful meditation is proven to reduce stress, improve communication, increase awareness, productivity, creativity. That's why companies like Google and Amazon have meditation pods, in their open spaces, and folks go and meditate and they walk out feeling refreshed, and all of a sudden they have a great idea to do X, Y, and Z. And some of the most creative minds sometimes, are deep meditators. Now, the science is slowly changing, but in general, it shows that meditating twice a day, even for short periods of time, like 10 minutes, is ideal versus once a day for 30 minutes or an hour. And that has a lot to do with how our neurons are firing in our brain. And it's just, what's that term? Fire. I can't, what fire stays together. I don't know. Okay. So, but it's the more it's firing, it's practice, then the more those linkages kind of stay. So you can use tools from mindful meditation or even micro mindful practices throughout your day to really enhance your emotional well-being. And we're going to practice some micro practices. I think maybe now. So let's talk a little bit about micro practices. And micro practices are ways that we have created at Zessa to help integrate into a busy day. These are not even 10-minute practices. These are not 30-minute practices. We're not telling you to sit, and meditate silently. These are 30 seconds, 10 seconds, breathing techniques, things that can be easily, seamlessly integrated into your day. So we're going to do 3 exercises. And in particular, when combining, it does enhance your emotional intelligence and well-being. So we're going to start with, I'm going to talk through the exercises and then we'll practice. So we're going to start with the doorknob exercise, and it invites us to become more aware of and regulate our own thoughts and emotions. And the doorknob exercise is similar to the stop practice. It's a foundational mindfulness practice that allows us to get out of autopilot mode and see things with clarity and practice being settled so we can focus on what needs to be done. And so we'll go through the stop practice and then let's see. And then I think there's also a stethoscope practice and hand on the shoulder that we can do. So let's practice. Should we do that? And since we're on Zoom and you're not walking into a meeting right now, or you're not on your way to see your next patient, I invite you to just join me in a guided visualization. And you can take some time to find a comfortable position. Maybe close your eyes as I kind of guide you through a typical day. So let's envision, and I'm not exactly sure who's in the room, but I'm guessing you all are related somehow. You have some sort of healthcare job, whether you're a physician or a nurse or assisting in any other way. But envision a typical day going from patient room to patient room. Take a moment to imagine yourself in your normal working environment. Notice the walls, the floor, maybe even the people you typically see throughout your day. And bring these images to your mind's eye. Really feel like you're there. Now imagine you're walking down the hall to the door of your 5th patient of the day. Then you stop at the door. This is the stop practice. This is where you stop, you take a few breaths, you observe, and you move on. So you stop at the door. Maybe you place your hand on the doorknob. So the first step is to stop. Stop what you're doing. You're running from patient room to patient room. Just stop. Place your hand on the doorknob. Now take a few breaths in to settle your body because you've been running around. Take a breath in, exhale out. You probably only have about 20 seconds. So you open your eyes, you observe the doorknob. What does it feel like? Is it cold? Is it hard? Is it smooth? Is your grip tight or loose? Now notice any thoughts or emotions or sensations that you're having. Just notice and observe. Take time to become aware of any stress, tension, anxiety that you may be carrying from the previous place you just came from, whether it was another patient's room or the office. Just be aware of that tension in your body. And take another deep breath in. Exhale out and turn the knob to open the door and choose to proceed with intention. Now, at this moment, you may choose to arrive in front of your patient as a blank slate, leaving behind anything that distracted you or, took away your full attention. Now we're going to continue and we're going to integrate the stethoscope exercise. So as you're talking to your patient, you remove your stethoscope from around your neck or out of your pocket. And you notice the weight of the scope and how when you secure the earpieces, the rest of the world kind of just fades away. And everything that comes in contact with that stethoscope is magnified, allowing yourself to fully listen to the rhythm of this patient's heartbeat. 20 seconds, just listening. Noticing when the mind wanders and bringing it back to that heartbeat. Now recognizing you have the privilege of experiencing this intimate connection with your patient, allowing you to peek into their life, giving you insight as to who they are and what they're going through. And then if we fast forward to the end of your time with this patient, as you conclude your visit, maybe you choose to place your hand gently on the patient's shoulder, briefly communicating warmth, care, the power of this human touch, reassuring the patient that you are here to care for them and be on this health journey with them. And then exiting the room and on to the next patient. Now we can transition out of this guided imagery. If your eyes are closed, feel free to open them. But these 3 micro practices that we kind of integrated into that story, they can be extremely powerful when connecting and improving patient success, just presence with doctors. I mean, we know through HCAHPS scores, Press-Ganey scores that, that interaction is not always there, that presence is not always there. How do we improve that? Dr. Epstein's done a ton of studies, and he's shown that patients of clinicians practicing mindfulness are more likely to disclose personal information, maybe critical information, that can help with their health. So something as subtle as placing your hand on a patient's shoulder and taking a few moments to become fully present with the rhythm of the heartbeat. Not only can you improve your own emotional intelligence, but that relationship with your patient can be successful. So I didn't go through exactly what those micro practices were, but so the first was the doorknob, where you kind of hold and you kind of you're in the present moment, you feel your own emotions and your thoughts and your feelings, and then actually physically feeling the doorknob and how that feels. That was the first one we reviewed. The second was with the STOP methodology, and I just want to take a moment to talk about the STOP methodology. And the STOP methodology is where you stop what you're doing. You might be running around and you realize you're a little overwhelmed, and So you just stop, whatever it is you're doing. You take a few breaths in and out, and then you observe. So it's STO, you observe, and you check in with yourself. What's going on inside of you? What's going on around you? And then the P is to pick up and proceed. Just proceed on with your day. This can take 10 seconds. It can take 5 seconds, but the implications of how it affects the next thing you do are drastic, maybe even decreasing medical errors. You want me to be honest. And then the stethoscope exercise, it was really to invite you to become more present with the patient in front of you. I know when you put the scope on, it really kind of takes away the rest of the world. I think that's a beautiful experience in general, and really just connecting. So those are the 3 micro practices. I wanted to do those with you. And then we're going to finish off with a guided meditation here. Might get done a little sooner, but we can do a longer guided meditation. Does that sound? Is everyone doing okay? Okay, we're going to do a body scan. So I welcome you all to get into a comfortable position. If you have the ability to lay, it could be a great experience to lay. Close your eyes. So in this guided body scan, we're going to move awareness systematically through the body. So just follow along with the guidance, noticing what's present for you at the moment, bringing curiosity and a gentle acceptance to whatever you find. So take a deep breath in through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Just do that 2 more times. In through the nose, exhale through the mouth. One last time. Inhale. Exhale. If you're sitting, let the hips settle into the chair. Feeling the feet on the floor. Your spine straight, but not stiff. Relaxing your shoulders. As you scan the body, if you notice pain or emotional discomfort, you may choose to return to your breath, allowing yourself to rest in the stillness, beginning with noticing the breath and the movement in and out of the body. Keep in mind, my guidance is only a suggestion. If at any point you want to stop the practice, you're welcome to do so. Rejoin us when you would like. Now, take a moment to bring awareness to your natural rhythm of breathing. The flow of the in-breath and the out-breath, just as it is. No need to change anything. Bringing attention to your feet. exploring any sensations in the toes, the soles of the feet, in the top of the feet, becoming aware of any sensations in the feet and meeting what you find with curiosity. Shifting awareness to the legs, the ankle, the lower legs, the shin bones, muscles in the calves. Noticing what there is to discover in the lower legs. Now become aware of the knees, kneecaps, the tendons, the muscles. And if your mind wanders, just bring it back to your breath. Bringing attention to your thighs, maybe sensing the contact with the chair or the floor. Shifting your attention to the torso, to your hips, your pelvis, your tailbone and your buttocks. Noticing what there is to discover in this area of the body. Bringing your attention to your back, your lower back, your middle back, your upper back. This tends to be an area where people hold tension. So taking your time and meeting what you find with a friendly curiosity. No judgment. Take a deep breath in. Exhale out. Bringing attention to your shoulder blades. And learning to be with the sensations as they arise. Moving toward the abdomen and the ribs. Maybe sensing the subtle movements of the rib cage as the lungs expand and release with every breath. Exploring the area of the heart and the chest, the sternum and the collarbones. What sensations are here to be felt? Now moving your attention to the tops of your shoulders, taking your time in this area that often holds tension, breathing into any pain. Shifting awareness to your arms, your upper arms, your elbows, your lower arms, your palms, hands, fingers, and thumbs. Noticing and sensing. Now moving your attention to the neck, the front of the neck, the throat, back of the neck. Noticing any tension or tightness or ease. Bringing your attention to the head, sensing the jaw, aware of the tightness or the clenching in the jaw and the chin and the teeth. Moving to the mouth, with lips, your teeth, your tongue, the inside of your mouth. Breathe in and out. Moving toward your nose, perhaps sensing the airflow during your in-breath and your out-breath. Noticing your cheekbones and the skin and the muscle on the face. Moving toward your ears, the ability to hear in this very moment. Your eyes and the bones around your eyes. Awareness of your forehead. Moving your attention to your scalp and your skull, protecting the brain. The sides of the head, the back of the head, the crown of the head. Now, inviting awareness to the entire body, from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes. Resting in the awareness of your connection to your body. Appreciating that you've taken the time to pause, to to cultivate your capacity to be present, and to replenish yourself in this way. I invite you to transition out of the meditation by gently wiggling your toes and your fingers. Open your eyes when you're ready. May you give your body the compassion it needs throughout the rest of the evening. Best wishes, and may you be well. Welcome back. You will be receiving a toolkit from me, which has a worksheet in it, a Greater Good Science Center quiz. Then I'm guessing that you'll have this recording for the guided meditation and some references. We do have guided meditations on our website, so take a look at that. They are free. They're available anytime you need them. And remember, your breath is available anytime you need it. Wow. We were given that, that's for sure. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Before we sign off, I just want to double check to see if anyone had any questions. I am so relaxed right now.
Good. Everyone will sleep well tonight. I'm available. Reach out to me if any questions come up. Check us out on our website and on social media. We do some video practices, so you can keep an eye on us.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for attending tonight's session. This was our first of our fiscal year, and we truly appreciate your time and participation. A special thank you to Dr. Vaidya for an informative, insightful talk today on emotional well-being for healthcare professionals. We hope tonight that you found something valuable, and we hope you're able to share it. We also invite you to join us for any of our future classes, and we look forward to seeing you again. So thank you all and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.